All of us will die sooner or later. Most of us will go in some manner that is not terribly unusual. However, some folks will die in a way that is unusual or in some manner very striking. In today's episode, we'll dive back in time to the ancient world and look at three such persons. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Me, Myself, and I History, where weird history and strange happenings in the universe are always on the menu. My name is Seraphim. In today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive, deep into ancient history, that is. We all know someone who has died. Perhaps it was a loved one or a friend. Certainly, many celebrities have had notable deaths. Death has been the opening scene setter in some biopics like the classic 1984 movie Amadeus, directed by Milos Forman. For most of us, death is fearful but expected. Some die in their sleep, some die in accidents, or as a result of terminal illness. Some, however, die in very ironic ways. In today's episode, we'll talk about the lives and the ironic deaths of three notable figures from the ancient world. Let's take them in no particular order and get started. Just a note before I begin this segment of our journey today. I am going to do my best to do justice to the pronunciation of Chinese names based on my understanding of the pinyin written form. If I fail, and you speak or understand Chinese, bear with me. I really am trying, but I don't speak the language and will likely fail in at least some points. From 1966 to 1976, Chairman Mao Zedong instituted the Cultural Revolution to preserve Chinese socialism and eradicate the last of the capitalist and traditionalist ideas and customs from China. The four olds, old ideas, old habits, old customs, and old culture, were to be erased. One of history's great ironies was that in 1974, in this terrible time in China, the farmers near Xi'an found something that utterly embodied all of the four olds, the Terracotta Army. Although descriptions of the man buried there have been recorded in several ancient Chinese history books, it was questioned whether these were simply fantastical or not. It turns up they weren't. So, who was this man? His personal name was Ying Zheng, or in some records, Zheng Zhou. He was born sometime in February 259 BC. His mother was Lady Zhao, and his father was King Zhuangxiang of the Qin state. It was nearing the end of the Warring States period in Chinese history. King Zhuangxiang died after a mere 3 years on the throne. He was succeeded by his now 13-year-old son. A regent prime minister was appointed and his mother became the queen dowager. Soon, court intrigues began and a coup d'etat was attempted. The regent prime minister committed suicide over his role in the plot by drinking poisoned wine. Zheng Zhou then assumed the full kingship and imprisoned his mother for life for her part in the plot. The leader of the coup, Lao Ai, was executed by being torn into pieces by 5 horses driven 5 different directions. Zheng Zhou survived 2 assassination attempts after this as well. Starting in 230 BC, King Zheng Zhou began his conquests. That same year, the Han, the weakest and smallest of the other 6 warring states, fell to him. One by one, over the next 9 years, the others fell, until in 221 BC, he had unified China under his sole rule. He quickly did away with the patchwork of bureaucracies, and even executed many learned men in order to implement a nationwide system of government and bureaucracy known as Chinese legalism. He instituted economic reforms. He also placed statuary and memorial steles all over his realm. In order to cement his place as the undisputed ruler of all others in his China, he took a title not used before, emperor. As China's first emperor, he took an imperial name, Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang's public works included his own Terracotta Army necropolis, the Great Wall of China, and the Lingchu Canal, which are some of the most amazing feats of engineering and manual labor in the ancient world. However, as Qin Shi Huang grew older, one feat obsessed him more than any other: finding the elixir of life. The emperor who feared no man was fearful of the grim reaper, apparently. He sent the Taoist alchemist Xu Fu with 500 young men and 500 young women over the eastern seas to seek out the legendary Mount Panglai. None returned, though legend holds that they discovered and colonized Japan. Alchemical texts in use at the time listed many different ingredients as promoting longevity in their users. Powdered jade, gold, or hematite were often thought to convey this. Unfortunately, these formulae also included things now known to us as very toxic substances like arsenates, sulfur, and mercury. It was during his 5th tour of eastern China in 210 BC that Qin Shi Huang, now aged 49, died. He was apparently nonchalant about it. He is quoted to have said on his deathbed, "I've survived countless battles. What is one more?" It is believed by many that it was the latest elixir of life that was given to him by a court alchemist to drink that gave him fatal mercury poisoning. Now let's move forward 75 years and go from the eastern border of Asia to the western one in the Anatolian Peninsula in modern-day Turkey. In northern Anatolia, we find the ancient kingdom of Pontus. Pontus, in 135 BC, was a Hellenic kingdom on the northeastern part of the Anatolian Peninsula. It was reigned over by Persian-descended rulers, however, and they may have been directly related to Darius the Great of the Achaemenid dynasty. It was here, in that year, that Mithridates VI Eupator was born. He was the son of Mithridates V Euergetes and Laodice VI, a Seleucid princess who became queen of Pontus by that marriage. In 120 BC, Mithridates V died of poisoning at a lavish banquet he had thrown. No one knows who killed him or why, but it left Laodice and her 2 sons, Mithridates Eupator and Mithridates Chrestus, as co-regents. Since both boys were under the age of majority, Laodice held all power as queen regent. Whatever power she held, she strongly preferred the younger Chrestus to the older Eupator. Eupator, seeing his mother's machinations against him, went into hiding with a few followers. In 116 BC, he came out of hiding and was immediately hailed as king. By now, he was a man of considerable stature, physical strength, and had natural talents for politics and strategy. Soon, his mother was imprisoned where she died, ostensibly of natural causes. Chrestus might have been tried for treason and executed. Both were given royal funerals. I mean, the state and its ruler have to look charitable, right? Mithridates, knowing that his father was killed by poisoning, did what Wesley, a.k.a. the dread pirate Roberts, did in The Princess Bride. He ingested tiny doses of known poisons over the years to develop a resistance to common poisons. He was not going to die by some unhappy poisoner's hand. Before long, Mithridates was consolidating his power and conquering nearby regions, both in Anatolia as well as around the Black Sea coast as far as the Crimea and the Dnieper River. His reign expanded across the Anatolian Peninsula too. One after another, petty kingdoms submitted to his overlordship in exchange for protection against the Scythians, their ancient enemies. Although King Nicomedes III of Bithynia was technically a vassal to Mithridates, and they got along well initially, by the late 90s BC, it was clear that Nicomedes was leading an anti-Pontic alliance that intended to overthrow Mithridates. Nicomedes had been courting the Roman Republic for help. The final falling out was over control of Cappadocia, and Nicomedes III openly asked for Rome's assistance. Rome, as Rome always did, came to the rescue, at a price. Soon, Nicomedes IV had taken the throne, but he was only a figurehead. At Rome's instigation, he declared war on Pontus. Rome, already deeply embroiled in the social war, had only 2 legions to offer in all of Asia, and these combined with the Bithynian armies. In 89 BC, Mithridates won a decisive victory. He not only scattered the Roman-led army, but was hailed as a hero throughout Anatolia. The following year, in retaliation for the war, Mithridates orchestrated the annihilation of 80,000 Roman and Italian settlers in Anatolia, an event now known to us as the Asiatic Vespers, or sometimes the Ephesian Vespers. It became the casus belli of the First Mithridatic War, lasting from 88 to 84 BC. Although the war went well for the Romans overall, and the Pontic forces were driven back from the Hellenized parts of Anatolia, news of trouble on the home front in Rome led to hastily concluded peace negotiations that were very lenient on Mithridates. Although never ratified in the Roman Senate, the pause allowed Mithridates to rebuild his armies in the absence of Roman legions. A year later, the Second Mithridatic War happened when Lucius Licinius Murena, a Roman praetor who had successfully fought against Mithridates in the First Mithridatic War, brought fresh legions to Anatolia. Only these legions were green and had little combat experience. After their defeat, the peace treaty that Rome had not ratified was invoked and resumed. When Rome tried to annex Bithynia, which Pontus claimed overlordship to in 73 BC, it also attacked Pontus with its legions. This led to the protracted 10-year-long Third Mithridatic War. Rome, no longer bogged down in domestic wars with other local intrigues, was prepared to fight. They drove Mithridates into exile. He came back out of exile and defeated 4 legions of Valerius Triarius at the Battle of Zela in 67 BC. A year later, in 66 BC, Pompey's legions routed him at the Battle of Lycus. Mithridates fled to the Crimea, where his son was the viceroy of the Cimmerian Bosporus kingdom, which straddled the modern-day Strait of Kerch. His son refused to help him, so Mithridates had him deposed and executed. After acquiring the Bosporan throne for himself, Mithridates began a program of conscriptions and preparations to regain his Pontic kingdom and throne from the Romans. It was also here that he finally met his end. His demands on his lords and underlings proved to be too harsh. Another of his sons, Pharnaces II of Pontus, led a rebellion, joined by a body of Roman exiles from the core of his army. Mithridates VI Eupator retreated into the Panticapaeum fortress on the shores of the Strait of Kerch. It was the Greek historian Appian of Alexandria, who had Roman citizenship, who gives us the details of Mithridates' death. He and 2 of his daughters, one also called Mithridates and another called Nyssa, were in a room with his Gallic personal bodyguard and friend Bituitus, not to be confused with the Gallic king of the same name. Mithridates pulled out some poison that he always carried with his sword. His daughters refused to let him take some unless he also let them partake first. He did, and they very quickly died. Mithridates consumed the rest. It had no apparent effect. He began to walk around the room quickly to hasten the toxic effects and properties of his poison. Nothing happened. Calling Bituitus to him, he said, "I have profited much from your right arm against my enemies. I shall profit from it most of all if you will kill me and save from the danger of being led in a Roman triumph one who has been an autocrat so many years and the ruler of so great a kingdom, but who is now unable to die by poison because, like a fool, he has fortified himself against the poison of others. Although I have kept watch and ward against all the poisons that one takes with his food, I have not provided against that domestic poison, always the most dangerous to kings, the treachery of army, children, and friends." Appian adds that Bituitus, having been given his orders, gave the service that he was requested to give with his dagger. The man who had inoculated himself against poison could not kill himself by that method and needed help from his own bodyguard. Marcus Licinius Crassus was born sometime in 115 BC. He was born to a well-respected plebeian family. His father, Publius, had been consul and even governor of Hispania, or modern-day Spain and Portugal. Although plebeian, or a free commoner, Crassus was able to serve in the Roman legions as an officer. In fact, that's where he began his public career. As a commander under Lucius Cornelius Sulla Felix, best known to us today as Sulla, Marcus was able to rise to some prominence. During Rome's first major civil war, Sulla defeated his opponents in a decisive battle just outside of Rome itself in 82 BC. As the saying goes, to the victors go the spoils. Sulla declared himself dictator of Rome. Crassus took his modest wealth and began a highly successful side career of land speculation. It was so successful, in fact, that he has come to be known in history as the richest man in Rome. In modern parlance, we might say of him today, anything for a buck. He was incredibly wealthy and had an almost avaricious love of money and things money afforded him. In 73 BC, 70 gladiator slaves escaped from the gladiator school in Capua. This began the Third Servile War, better known to us today as the Spartacus War or the Spartacus Rebellion. They quickly defeated the small Roman force sent to recapture them. Over the course of 2 years, 70 gladiators turned into 120,000 escaped slaves, including women and children. They had turned into a powerful military force that the Roman legions seemed incapable of stopping. For 2 years, these escaped slaves roamed the countryside, raiding estates with apparent impunity. The Roman Senate had had enough. Knowing that Crassus was a stern but effective leader, they put him in charge of 8 legions and sent him out to put down this rebellion. Where Pompey's legion and that of Lucullus could not put down the rebellion, Crassus' legions roused the full fighting strength of the rebels, who were decisively defeated in 71 BC. 6,000 of the survivors among the rebels were crucified along the Appian Way into Rome. Crassus was now not just the wealthiest man in the empire, he was also one of the most popular. Crassus was already a financial supporter of Julius Caesar and was now invited to join the first triumvirate with him in Pompeii due to his wealth and popularity among the common people. Note, I am pronouncing the word Kaiser as it is pronounced in Latin, not the anglicized Caesar. While Caesar and Crassus were lifelong friends and allies, Pompey and Crassus did not like each other, and Pompey soon became jealous of Caesar's success in the Gallic Wars in Transalpine Gaul. Of course, there was infighting among them for it. This was later stabilized, and in 56 BC, Crassus, while serving as consul for the second time, was appointed governor of Roman Syria. This was yet another chance at increasing his fortunes and gaining more glory, both personally and for Rome. Crassus was both a political leader and a very able and proven legionary commander. Seeing a succession war taking place in neighboring Parthia, the eastern enemy of the Roman Republic, he made preparations for war. This was his chance to expand Rome's borders and his own legend. His now elderly father joined him in Syria, bringing more than 1,000 Gallic heavy cavalry to add to the complement of 7 legions of heavy infantry being prepared. An additional 4,000 Roman cavalry, 6,000 light infantry, and between 10 and 30,000 Hellenic troops from Syria joining, Crassus had what would be a formidable force by any standard. Although vastly outnumbered by the Romans, the Parthians harassed and frightened the Romans and lured them into a trap at the Battle of Carrhae. The Parthian cavalry was swift and agile, and the slow, cumbersome Roman troops could not compete with them on open ground. The Romans were defeated. While negotiating the truce, the negotiations turned violent and Crassus was captured. For violating Rome's treaty with Parthia, he was sentenced to death. Not just any death would do. This one had to be symbolic and send a message back to Rome that Parthia would not tolerate their presence any longer. For one as wealthy and avaricious as Crassus, only one method of execution would do. A crucible was filled with gold. Once the gold was molten, Crassus' mouth was forced open and the gold was poured in. So there you have it. While most of us can expect to die in the most ordinary of ways, these 3 men died in ways that were both unusual and ironic. Perhaps in a future video, I may return to this topic in other time periods. If you enjoyed the content in this video, hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification icon to get notified of all the latest content on this channel. Leave a comment if you had something to add to this episode or just want to add your own thoughts. Until next time, my friends, this is Seraphim with Me, Myself, and I History signing off.